Hello viewers, today is an auspicious day. Today is Varalakshmi Vratham. Let's understand story of Varalakshmi Vratham from Lakshmi Vratha Katha. Varalakshmi Vratham is a popular ritual observed by married women in South India and Maharashtra. Pujas and prayers are offered to goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and prosperity on the day. There are a couple of popular stories associated with Varalakshmi Vratham. The most important among them are story of Charumati and that of Syamabhala. Story of Charumati and Varamahalakshmi. According to Skanda Purana, once goddess Parvati asked Lord Shiva about a Vratha that will be beneficial to women. Lord Shiva then mentioned the importance of Varalakshmi Vratha, which is most beneficial Vratha for women. To illustrate the importance of Varalakshmi Vratha, Lord Shiva narrated the story of Charumati. Pleased with Charumati's devotion to her husband and family, Goddess Lakshmi appeared in her dream and asked her to perform the Varalakshmi Vratha. She explained to her the procedures of Vratha. The pious Charumati invited all her neighbors, friends and relatives and performed the Varalakshmi Puja as directed by Goddess Lakshmi. Soon after the puja, all the people who participated in the puja were blessed with wealth and prosperity. A second story is about Syambala and Varalakshmi Vratha. Another popular story associated with Varamahalakshmi Vratha is that of Syamabala, King Bhatrasiravas and Queen Surachandrika had a daughter named Syamabala. She was married to a prince of a neighboring kingdom. Once, when Syamabala was in her parents' palace, she saw her mother, Queen Surachandrika, driving away an old lady. The old lady had asked the queen to perform Varalakshmi Puja, but the queen did not like a beggar advising her regarding pujas and therefore drove her out. A kind-hearted Syamabala invited the old lady and listened to the greatness of Varalakshmi Vratha. When she returned to her country, she performed the Vratha as directed by the old lady. Soon her kingdom started prospering and the prince was appreciated for his good governance. But parents of Syambala had to undergo numerous sufferings. And there were sufferings all around. The king and queen lost all his wealth and people started revolting against their rule. Hearing about the suffering in her parents' kingdom, Syambala sent pots of gold, but the moment Queen Surachandrika set her eyes on them, they turned into ashes. Upon hearing this incident, Syambala realized that all this is the result of her mother driving out the old woman from the palace. She realized that the old woman was goddess Lakshmi in disguise. Syambala asked her mother to ask forgiveness to goddess Lakshmi and perform the Varalakshmi Vratha. She did so and was able to attain the previous glory. Let's understand another story of Curse of Chitranemi. According to another story in Hindu scriptures, the origin of Varalakshmi Vratha is associated with a game of dice played between Lord Shiva and Parvati. Goddess Parvati, who was winning all the games, was accused of cheating by Lord Shiva. So they decided to appoint Chitranemi, a Gana of Shiva, as the umpire. Chitranemi ruled in favor of Lord Shiva and this angered goddess Parvati, who cursed him to be leper. Shiva asked Parvati to forgive Chitranemi and she agreed to revoke the curse if he watched Varalakshmi Vratha performed by pious women. The tradition of Varalakshmi Vratha started from then onwards. On this day, it is important after Varalakshmi Vratha, we should read 108 names of Sri Mahalakshmi. Om Mahalakshmi cha vidmahe Vishnupatnye cha dhimahi tanno Lakshmi prachodayat. That means we think of goddess of wealth and meditate upon the consort of Lord Vishnu. May goddess Lakshmi propel us forward. Om Prakratyai Namaha, which means salutations to the creation. Om Vikrityai Namaha, which means salutations to the transformative nature. Om Vidyayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of wisdom. Om Sarvabhuta Hitapradayai Namaha, salutations to the one who grants well-being of all creatures. Om Shraddhayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of devotion. Om Vibhutyai Namaha, which means salutations to extraordinary manifestation. Om Surabhyai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who causes pleasantness. Om Paramatmikayai Namaha, which means salutations to the omnipresent one. Om Vache Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of speech. Om Padmalayayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one residing on the lotus. Om Padmayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of lotus. Om Shuchai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of purity. Om Swahayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of offering. Om Swadhayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is self-sustained. Om Sudhayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of nectar. Om Dhanyayai Namaha, which means salutations to the personification of gratitude. Om Hiranmayai Namaha, which means salutations to the golden appearance. Om Lakshmi Namaha, which means salutations to the goddess of wealth. Om Nityapustayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is ever strong. Om Vibhavaryai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of brilliance. Om Adityai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is boundless. Om Dityai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who causes duality. Om Deeptayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who causes duality. Om Vasudhayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who sustains fortune. Om Vasudharinyai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who holds fortune. Om Kamalayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one emanating from the lotus. Om Kantayai Namaha, which means salutations to the consort of Vishnu. Om Kshamayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of patience. Om Kshirodasambhavayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one born out of the Milky Ocean. Om Anugraha Pradayai Namaha, which means salutations to the granter of good wishes. Om Buddhyai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of intellect. Om Anaghayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is faultless. Om Harivallabhayai Namaha, which means salutations to the consort of Lord Hari. Om Ashokayai Namaha, which means salutations to the dispeller of sorrows. Om Amritayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of immortal elixir. Om Deeptayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of light. Om Lokashoka Vinashinyai Namaha, which means salutations to the remover of sorrow in the world. Om Dharmanilayayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one established in cosmic law. Om Karunayai Namaha, which means salutations to the compassionate one. Om Lokamatre Namaha, which means salutations to the mother of universe. Om Padma Priyayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who loves lotus. Om Padmahastayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one holding lotus in her hands. Om Padmakshai Namaha, which means salutations to the lotus-eyed one. Om Padmasundaryai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is beautiful like lotus. Om Padmodbhavayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who emerged out of lotus. Om Padmamukhyai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who has the blooming face of a lotus. Om Padmanabha Priyayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one beloved by Padmanabha, Lord Vishnu. Om Ramayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who causes pleasure. Om Padmamaladharayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who wears a lotus garland. Om Devyai Namaha, which means salutation to the one who causes illuminance. Om Padminyai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of the lotus. Om Padmagandhinyai Namaha, which means salutations to the one with fragrance of a lotus. Om Punyagandhayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one with an auspicious fragrance. Om Suprasannayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one with pleasant countenance. Om Chandravadanaye Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of moon. Om Chandravadanaye Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of moon. Om Chandraye Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is moon herself. Om Chandra Sahodaryai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is born along with the moon. Om Chaturbhujayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one with 4 arms. Om Chandra Rupayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one with the appearance of the moon. Om Indirayai Namaha, which means salutations to the feminine expression of Indu, the moon. Om Indushitalayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one with the coolness of the moon. Om Ahladajananyai Namaha, which means salutations to the source of happiness. Om Pushtayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is strong. Om Shivayai Namaha, which means salutations to the auspicious one. Om Shivakaryai Namaha, which means salutations to the source of auspicious things. Om Satyai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of all truth. Om Vimalayai Namaha, which means salutations to the pure one. Om Vishwajananyai Namaha, which means salutations to the mother of universe. Om Tushtayai Namaha, which means salutations to the forever fulfilled. Om Daridranashanyai Namaha, which means salutations to the remover of poverty. Om Preeti Pushkarinyai Namaha, which means salutations to the one with pleasing eyes. Om Shantayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of peace. Om Shuklamalyambarayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one clad in white garments. Om Shriyai Namaha, which means salutations to the goddess of fortune. Om Bhaskaryai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is radiant like the sun. Om Bilvanilayayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who resides under a bilva tree. Om Vararohayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one eager to offer boons. Om Yashashvinyai Namaha, which means salutations to the well-reputed one. Om Vasundharayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who holds good fortune, the embodiment of earth. Om Udarangayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one endowed with beautiful body. Om Harinyai Namaha, which means salutations to the consort of Hari, Lord Vishnu. Om Hemamalinyai Namaha, which means salutations to the one draped in golden garlands. Om Dhanadhanyakaryai Namaha, which means salutations to the bestower of wealth and nourishment. Om Siddhyai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of attainment. Om Sada Saumyayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is always gentle. Om Shubhapradayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who grants Shubha well-being. Om Nrupaveshamagatanandayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who enjoys the abode of leaders. Om Varalakshmi Namaha, which means salutations to the one who grants boons. Om Vasupradayai Namaha, which means salutations to the bestower of wealth. Om Shubhayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of good things. Om Hiranyaprakarayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who is surrounded by a golden periphery. Om Samudratanayayi Namaha, which means salutations to the daughter of ocean of the milk. Om Jayayi Namaha, which means salutations to the goddess of victory. Om Mangalayi Namaha, which means salutations to the goddess of auspiciousness. Om Devyai Namaha, which means salutations to the divine feminine. Om Vishnu Vakshasthala Sthithayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one residing in Vishnu's chest. Om Vishnu Patnyai Namaha, which means salutations to the consort of Lord Vishnu. Om Prasannakshai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who has a pleasant gaze. Om Narayana Samashritayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one who resides in Narayana, Lord Vishnu. Om Daridryadvamsinyai Namaha, which means salutations to the destroyer of poverty. Om Sarvopadravavarinyai Namaha, which means salutations to the dispeller of all distress. Om Navadurgayai Namaha, which means salutations to the 9 forms of Durga. Om Mahakalyai Namaha, which means salutations to the form of Kali. Om Brahma Vishnu Shivatmikayai Namaha, which means salutations to the embodiment of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. Om Trikalagnana Sampannayai Namaha, which means salutations to the one aware of all past, present and future. Om Bhuvaneshwaryai Namaha, which means salutations to the ruler of the world. Om Sri Mahalakshmi Namo Namaha, which means salutations to the goddess of wealth again and again.